Okay, let's get rolling.
The games begin, as they say.
Yeah, I was going to say, otherwise we're just going to end up talking anyway
I
for
know.
like 2 hours, and I'm just not going to have a good introduction into it. So we get rocking and rolling then. Hello, and welcome to Runnah, running on Cape Cod, Massachusetts and beyond. Welcome back. I'm Juliana, your host. As usual, here we are, back again. And this week, I have with me a very important person, I would say, in the Falmouth and Massachusetts running community, Paul Clerici. Did I pronounce that correctly, Paul?
Yes, you did.
Yes! Ha! I did it.
We're off to a good start.
Well, welcome to Runnah, Paul.
Thank you. This is awesome. I love it. I love the shows.
I'm super excited to have you just because, like I said, like you're pretty integral in the Massachusetts running community. Not only are you like a race director and also just like someone who's run a lot of the races around here, you've written the history books on Falmouth, the Falmouth Road Race and the Boston Marathon.
That was fun.
Yeah, which is really cool. But I think where we should start off is, where does the Paul running story start? Like where, when, why, and how did you ever start running?
Probably like with most people in school.
Yeah.
From Walpole, Mass. Still
Okay.
am. About an hour from here.
Yep.
Falmouth is like my second home. My godparents have lived here for decades, so I've been coming here since I was a kid. But yeah, in school I just ran, not really road races yet, but I did basketball in school, junior high and high school. Then started running a little bit of road races. Walpole has a good number of road races, Norwood, Rentham,
like that.
Foxborough, Norfolk,
Yep.
the whole area, the community. It's got a lot of good road races. So I started running like 5Ks out of school. I went to Curry
Nice.
College in Milton.
Okay.
So I ran a little bit there, still playing basketball. And just started with that, always followed the Boston Marathon. Always knew about Falmouth, always came down here. It was really fun, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
And just loved the sport, followed the Olympics. Any track meets, because I ran track, so I would. You go to the armories, and if you ever run track, you're there for like 8 hours, especially if it's a tri meet with 3 schools.
Oh yeah, you're there
and you
all
run
day.
a couple of events. You're there all day.
Yeah, you're there all day.
So you better like track, because you watch all the other events. So that's half the fun.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it really started, and it just stayed with me. And then after I came back Curry College, I worked for the newspaper, the Walpole Times, as a sports editor.
Oh, okay.
And I started doing stories about Walpole runners running in the Boston Marathon.
What was your college education in? Was it journalism?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Basically a double major with communications, journalism, and photography.
Okay.
But photography was a minor because they didn't have a major, but I did enough credits for it to be. So I'm basically doing what I went to school for, which...
Wow, you're kind of in the minority, honestly.
yeah, I was going to say, some of my friends say you're actually doing what you went to school for.
I know. I feel like 25% of the people I know actually are doing something with their college degree right now. Like for the majority of their job.
Right.
Like, I mean, my college degree I'm using on the side, just being a dietitian. But currently it's not my full-time gig anymore. It used to be, but not anymore.
Yeah, so it's weird how some people went that way, or they'll revisit it.
Yeah, for sure.
But so interviewing Walpole runners who I knew, because I would run with them in smaller races.
Yeah.
They just kept telling me, they brought me closer to the Boston Marathon, because then they were telling me about it.
Yeah, I'm sure you knew people who were training for it.
Yeah, they were training for it. So I'm doing like 5Ks and 10Ks, and then I said, well, I'll do a half marathon. That'd be my goal.
Yeah,
Johnny
get risky
Kelly
about it.
had the Johnny Kelly half marathon in Barnstable at the time. And there was a bunch of half marathons, but I figured down the Cape.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah,
Why
first
not?
time I met Johnny Kelly, you know, he became friends, but that was the first time I met him was at his race. You know, and I saw Will Coloney there, the first race director of the Boston Marathon, Guy Morse. So it was a neat introduction to that level, like the next level.
Yeah.
You know, and then a friend of mine said, well, if you ran that, you should, run the Boston Marathon. I said, but that's like 2 of these.
Yeah, I have to do that twice.
Run after, I was happy with this one, but that planted the seed. Because the marathon was never my goal to run.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch and enjoy and know everybody. Because the 70s and 80s, it was the American winners, so we knew them all.
Yeah. And the people you've been following at
so
some
we could
point.
follow them. You know, the hometown interest was there. So we kind of enjoyed seeing them.
Yeah.
But that was never a goal to run. So then for my 24th birthday, I'm like, I could do something fun for the 25th, quarter of a century.
Uh-huh.
I said,
Celebrate that.
I'll most people get a cake or something. Like, I'm going to run the Boston Marathon. So I ran the Boston Marathon in 1990, and that was
Nice.
did in like 4:05, and I'm like, that's it. I do it. It was fine. It was good.
Yeah, and you're like, that was good.
But this story, I'm sure everyone knows about when you run marathons. About a week later, I'm like, well, that wasn't too bad. About a month later, I probably could have cut off 5 minutes somewhere. And the farther away you get from the pain, right?
The more you want to run it again.
I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
And then that was 1990. So in October, the Berlin Marathon, which had been occurring every year, was finally going to go from West to East Berlin because the wall had come down in 1989.
Okay.
So this was the first ever going through the Brandenburg Gate because the wall was down. So I'm thinking, what a great opportunity. I'll run that marathon.
Yeah.
So I did the Berlin Marathon, and then it just 43 marathons later.
I'm excited. I'm running Berlin in the fall too, so that'll be exciting.
Oh, it was weird because that was the week of the reunification of the city, the currency. It was a weird week because the wall came down in 1989.
Okay.
So October 1990, it was the first time the Berlin Marathon was going through the Brandenburg Gate. There's no wall. You won't get shot at going from one to the other.
That's a nice bonus right there.
Yeah. The imprint of the wall was still paved over, but you could go through.
Yeah.
Brandenburg Gate, Checkpoint Charlie, all these things. But everything was new. It was a weird time because like I say, that week, the city was going to be reunified. Everything was going to be combined, but it was still east-west.
Yeah, still that separation existed.
I remember walking by the Reichstag, the government building, it was getting sort of dark, and they had these spotlights. There was a rally going on. Oh, neat, something about the marathon. So I'm looking around, and I saw a lot of these tall, white, bald guys dressed in black walking around.
You're like,
I remember my history. I don't think I want to be around it, and it was like a neo-Nazi rally. And I'm going, that's right, I'm in Berlin. I think I'll skip this rally.
Yeah,
didn't go to that.
Rally.
So it was still, near the wall, there were soldiers selling their communist, uniforms.
Yeah, they don't need them anymore.
Because capitalism was going to take over that week, and it was a weird, interesting place to be
for sure
for that transition.
Yeah.
I brought we never could do this now. I brought a hammer and chisel in my suitcase
so
to hack away at the wall to get chunks to bring home to me and my family, and people were like lined up going, can you, I didn't think of that. Can you get one for me? I'm like,
yeah.
All right. So I'm just hacking away.
Hacking chunks off
because they can do that.
Wall.
You were allowed to walk up. The wall was big, so long. You can go anywhere. It was still up. Obviously, it was less than a year.
Yeah.
But it was a fascinating, and that's another thing about marathons. When you go, whether it's Disney World and you enjoy Disney, or something historical like this, it's like you see when you go to Berlin. It's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
The Kaiser Wilhelm Church is still there, right in the middle.
Okay.
All those old black and white photos you see of the bombing, that's the church in the middle of the Rotary. They've kept that. They've only kept a few things from the war as reminders, so you'll see that. Very vibrant city now.
Yeah.
But back then, 1990. So that's one thing that marathons has brought.
Oh,
those
100%.
kinds of things. And you make vacations out of it, and you learn about the city. So that was interesting. So that's.
Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic, and I totally agree with the marathons. Just not only like athletically expanding your prowess, but you can also expand like how you're seeing the world and like what you're seeing in the world. And my favorite thing about doing the World Marathon Majors so far has been that I kind of get a vacation determined for me to a place that I've never been that I get to travel to.
Nice.
And get to experience, like Berlin coming up, or like Tokyo last year, or like London next year. Like I'm going to have all these places that I have been and will go, and hopefully Sydney at some point, to be able to experience the culture there.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. And get to take in the city. I never understood the people who go, like I kind of understand it, but like on a fundamental level for me, I don't. The people who just go to the marathon and run it and then go home. I'm like, don't you want to experience something? Like,
especially if it's a different country.
Yeah. Even when I ran Tokyo last year, I know people who like literally flew in, and it's like a 32-hour travel day, like door to door, which is wild because you're in the air for like 17, 18 hours, which is very interesting. But they went through that whole process, ran the marathon, and then went home the next day. So they were in Japan like 3 days total. And I'm like, don't you want to stay? Like, this is such a cool place. Like, don't you want to stay and like see what it looks like?
So
here?
you're on the plane about the amount of time you were there.
Pretty much. Actually, more probably in the long run.
No, I love that. I did the Kingston Marathon in England.
Oh,
I haven't
that's
done
fun.
I haven't done London yet, but Kingston, which is a town outside of London,
Uh-huh.
had the Clydesdale Championships at the same time. I'm a
Oh,
Clydesdale
okay.
runner. Clydesdales are men 200 pounds or over. Women have a fillies category. So I'm a big guy, so I can't compete against people my own age successfully. So the Clydesdale division,
Yeah.
in some races they have that. So this particular year, they had the Clydesdale Championships. I came in second.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. That's pretty awesome.
Nice job, Paul.
But it was in Kingston, which is Hampton Court Palace, King Henry VIII, along the Thames. I mean, you know, I remember my history class. So
Yeah, you were there.
Like just like what you were saying, how beautiful.
Yeah.
So we started in Kingston. I think we did like a little 4-mile loop and then 3 6-mile loops.
Okay.
Whatever adds up to 26.
Okay.
So we go from the center of Kingston all the way to up the Thames River to the Hampton Court Palace and then down, and that was the larger loop we did 3 times.
Okay.
So it was interesting because you're in Kingston, and the buildings. I remember looking at it with my mother, and the side of the buildings have numbers, so you think it's the address. So one had 1066, and one had 11 something, but they
Yeah.
weren't in order.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, well, maybe England has something different. You know, our house, the streets are numerically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was
maybe
asking
something else.
somebody, I go, what's the deal with the numbers? And they said, well, that's when the buildings were built.
Oh.
So I was like, so that's been here since the Battle of Hastings, and that's been here. So all these buildings, okay. I mean, you know, I didn't know, I'm a dumb American going, I thought they were just signs. So we're in that old city.
Yeah.
And then but going up to Hampton Court Palace, it was funny. It rained the third loop. It was getting cloudy, but you're in England.
Yeah,
So like the
sounds about
second
right.
loop, I felt like Chevy Chase in Vacation Europe going around, you know, the hey kids, Big Bed Parliament, they're on the Rotary. So by the third loop, I'm like, oh good, Hampton Court Palace, great, Thames River, I want to get done. Because it's 26 miles and in the rain.
Yeah, running that many loops too.
But it
just
was
kinda
fun. I'm like, you're in Hampton Court Palace. I mean,
Yeah.
the history, you know.
Yeah, Europe is one of those places where the first time I went, I was just like, oh, there are old things here, like really old things.
Older than our country, obviously.
Yeah, like I went to Finland and we saw something that was like almost in the BC times. There was a castle that was like built in
Wow.
like 200 or something. And I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, we're talking like real old here, like
Yeah.
really, really old.
And if you really pay attention, there's a place in England that actually has Roman ruins in the middle of a road that the road goes around. It's actually been dug up archaeologically
Yeah.
from the Roman times. And then I did the Dublin Marathon in Ireland, and they actually
that's
have a
fun.
section of the Dublin Wall, this huge, massive, almost like a Stonehenge piece of wall
Yeah.
that used to protect Dublin City.
Yeah,
So things that we don't have here for obvious reasons, but you just see these magnificent historical
they're just kind of there.
landmarks that either you read about in history class or you didn't know about. Like I forgot about the Dublin Wall. I'm like, oh, that's right. But there's a big chunk of it right there between a sidewalk. That used to be around the city of Dublin during the war. It was interesting to get that, like you say, to your point.
Yeah,
You're there, you're running for one day, spend the other days.
yeah, seeing the other stuff that you
Yeah.
can't see or going back. I mean, I like to think of marathons as an expedited foot tour for the most part. The
Yeah.
loop course, kind of, in a way. You saw some things that you hadn't seen, but it's kind of like not the best foot tour in the entire world. But like even, I mean, Chicago and New York are great examples of this too, where you get to see the city from a perspective you can't ever
Right.
see it on any other day of the year.
They stop the traffic for you, they clear the
Yep.
streets.
There's no other day of the year where you're running through the middle of the street in New York City. That's
Right.
not happening.
And you do that in Europe, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Because it's just
so
all these
cool.
things you see. Usually when I get there, I'll get there a few days ahead of a marathon,
Yeah,
whether it's
same.
in the U.S. or the country. And then I'll get, if it's like in London or Ireland, I'll do one of those bus tours,
Yeah.
those double deckers. So I'm off my feet. I get to see the city the day before.
Yep.
So between that tour and then running 26 miles of the city, the rest of the week I'll kind of know where I really want to go visit.
Yeah, you kind of, I like to use
Like
the
what museum do I want to see? I did the tour guide,
Yep.
running on foot.
Yep,
Okay, I
and
kind of saw it, that was good. But now, wait, I want to see that more in a couple of days. So you
have, like,
your own tour guide.
We have kind of the exact same strategy, I think, Paul, of like, I'll do the marathon and I'll do like a preview and then I'll go back to the spots that I saw.
Right, you kind of remember it.
Yeah, and I'll just be like, oh, okay, these are the spots I kind of had in my head to see before the marathon, but while I was running it, I saw these things and I want to go back and see more of them. Yeah, it's such a much more well-rounded experience.
Yeah, pay attention, you only live once. The
Yeah.
Dublin Marathon we went through, I think it's called Phoenix Park. It's like their Central Park.
Oh, okay.
And I took the tour beforehand, like at the double-decker, and the Dublin Zoo is in that park.
Oh, okay.
And inside the zoo is lions, or are lions. The MGM lion logo that you see on movies is from Dublin.
Ah.
That lion, Leo the lion, it does the roar on the logo.
Yeah.
It's from that museum, which I didn't know.
Oh.
So the day or two later, part of the marathon goes through the park behind the zoo, so you don't go through the front.
Yeah.
So it's like 5 or 6. It's like dew on the grass. It's very quiet except for the runners. You know, it's first few miles, so you were still talking and you're running, and the morning is starting to clear, and we're going through the beautiful park, and then all of a sudden you hear lions roar.
Yeah.
Very loudly, and everyone stops talking. Now, I know because I did the tour that they're behind this brick wall. There's a zoo, but there's no signage that says zoo because we're sort of on the back of the zoo. But I know that brick wall that's covered with some trees, that's where the lions are. The runners that didn't know that are looking around going, are there lions in this park? Because they don't know there's a zoo there.
To Ireland?
I go, is there lions behind the tree? Is this Wizard of Oz? What's going on? I'm laughing because I know the lions. So we must have woken up. Maybe we're downwind with our sweat or just whatever 1,000 runners waking it up.
Yeah.
So I was running with some, I don't know who I was running with. I didn't know who they were. So I'm like, they said, is there lions? I go, that's actually a zoo. There's lions behind there. But don't tell anyone because it's funnier that they think there's lions roaming around
the park in
the
Ireland.
park in Dublin. And but it was weird. It echoed too.
Yeah.
Which was weird because it was Waterville Park, but it echoed because it was just so early, bounced off the
nothing
tree,
else
and
to
this light fog. It was a beautiful setting.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, everyone stopped talking, and they're running a little quicker. Like,
Mm.
can I outrun the lions? What's the old joke? As long as you're not last, if you're getting chased, right?
Yeah.
So
Just get the last person. That's it.
the lion gets that one. You're
That's
all
how
set.
lions work. Science, friends.
Yeah,
Science.
yes, run faster than someone. But that's what, like you're saying, enjoy or learn those things that you just pick up. That's an unexpected, neat little moment.
Yeah.
You know, like I say, you only live once, so do something like that. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, and I feel like you're someone who kind of runs marathons like me, where you're there for the experience, but also the community too.
Yeah.
You're there to meet.
That's why you're there.
Yeah, you're there to connect with other runners and experience things together, whether they're good or bad things. That's kind of to be determined in the day of the race. But I feel like that's just kind of like almost the essence of who you are, though, Paul, is like you love to connect with people.
Thanks. Oh, yeah, definitely.
We're
talkers.
Yeah, you and I
with
both.
The we're talkers.
Yeah, we do some kind of, I'll count this as journalism in some capacity. We both do some kind of like journalism and telling of other people's stories, like not only our own stories, but telling the stories of the people around us, whether that's through like the interviews you used to do at the paper or through your books that you've written or through just like talking to people.
Well, I love the stories. I remember interviewing, this was for, I can't remember which book now. It was a Falmouth Road Race book. I interviewed Rod Dixon, who was one of my interviews, who had won Falmouth.
Okay.
New Zealand medalist, great runner. And it was for the Falmouth Road Race book.
Yeah.
And he's great. I got to know him over the years, and he's a very good storyteller. And I knew I wanted to talk about that Falmouth that he won. One of the stories he says, it made him think of something else. And he says, that reminds me of the time that I was training. It was me, John Walker, and Steve Prefontaine. And we were, this has nothing to do with Falmouth, I'm sorry. And I'm like, Rod.
You have to tell that story anyway.
Anyone who starts a story with me, John Walker, and Pre, you finish the story.
Yeah.
Now, John Walker is another great New Zealand Olympian, Steve Prefontaine, who I ended up writing a book about Steve years later.
Okay.
And I revisited Rod. I go, can we get into that story a little bit more for the book?
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. It's like you don't stop someone. It had nothing to do with Falmouth.
Oh, yeah.
It just made him, we were talking about Falmouth and training for Falmouth, just made him think about this training with John Walker and Prefontaine. So that's when I said, you finish that story. So he finished the story. Again, it had nothing to do with Falmouth, and then we went back to Falmouth. But it's like you say, what am I going to say? Oh, yeah, I don't want to hear about a story about you and John Walker and Bree. No, come on, Rod, I'm talking about Falmouth. You don't do that.
Well,
if you're interested in people,
you want to hear the story.
You want to hear. That's who you are.
That's exactly what it is. If you have an interest in interviewing people or writing about people or chronicling someone's story in some capacity, you have to be genuinely curious about people's stories in general.
Right.
To be able to make that successful on a personal level, on a career level, whatever level.
And you enjoy it too.
Yeah.
And hopefully that person's I want the experience to be enjoyable for both of us.
Agreed. Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can sit there and go, all right, tell me about this. Yeah. Okay, fine. How was that? That was good. Yeah. Okay. You know, that was good. First, where's the fun and joy in that? Secondly, you're not going to get good stories. And, you know, thirdly, it's rude.
Yeah, that's very true.
Number one, that's rude. So, but you want to enjoy it. I mean, come on. You're hearing about other people. You know, I remember interviewing Patty Dillons, Patty Catalano, Patty Lyons, at some point, 3-time runner-up Boston Marathon, excellent runner, sweetheart. And she was telling me a story. I love being put somewhere that I've never been through a story. She's telling me about a marathon she ran in the Rio Marathon, Brazil.
Oh, okay.
And she had no money, and the only way for her to fly home was to win.
Well, that's some motivation for you right there.
And part of the course was an out and back, and it went by her hotel. And she was having a tough time. And I forget who was in second place, but she was leading. She's a really good runner, if you know her. And she's telling me, I love the story. She goes, it's Rio, it's hot, it's humid. She has a ponytail, and she remembers there's a point with the course where you go out and you turn around so you can see who's behind you, which some courses do. So she kind of knew who was behind her. So she passes her hotel, and she's thinking about quitting because her hotel is right there. She's really she's not feeling well. She's still in the lead, but she's just not feeling well. She ended up losing all her toenails after the race. But she didn't know that at the time, but she had that discomfort.
Good Lord.
Most runners understand somewhere along that, because she ran hard. And with that weather. But she realized, if I stop, I don't have enough money to go home. So she went past her hotel, and she said she remembers hearing a noise behind her, a steady noise, and she thought it was the woman in second.
Was there a ponytail hitting her?
It was a ponytail that was wet from the humidity hitting the back of her
neck.
Shoulder. And she goes, I got to stop. She kept looking around to see who was behind her. And it was her ponytail, so she's like, I got to focus on what's ahead of me. I can't focus on that. Details like that put me and the reader right there.
You put us directly in the center of what's happening.
That's a beautiful story. She put you right. She ended up winning. She won. She came home. She put me there. Johnny Kelly the younger. There's two Johnny Kellys. Johnny Kelly the younger out of Connecticut, won Boston in 1957. Johnny Elder, the Cape, who won Boston twice. Passed in 2000, mid-teens at 97 years old. They're not related, but we call him the Elder and younger. Johnny Kelly the younger, I interviewed him several times, became a friend of mine. And one of the stories he was telling me, he'd be in second place behind somebody in Boston or one of the Yonkers Nationals that he won. And he would see the wrinkled lines in the back of someone's neck and the sweat coming down would let him know this person's struggling a little more. And he'd focus on the back of his neck. He'd stay right off his shoulder, and he would just see the strain. Because, you know, when you run, sometimes you tighten up a little. He would see a strain, and he'd see these the wrinkled lines in the back of the neck kind of get close, and the more sweat. So he knew at a certain point, Johnny knew that he could pass him and create some distance and win. That puts you right there with them. That story puts you right there. I mean, you can't beat a story.
No.
That's better than even watching it on TV. You know, that story puts you right next to him to see the sweat coming down the back of the neck. So those stories you can't beat.
And those are the details that just like bring a story to life.
And make it brings you right there.
They make it real. Because I mean, you can hear a story like that's very like topical and blasé about like, hey, this person just won a race, and your brain is like, whatever. Like, I don't really care. But if you go into like those personal stories too, like you could tell a story about like us sitting at this table together and make it sound like the most riveting story in the entire world, because you share the details about whatever
Right.
happened, and the way you frame it also makes a big difference too. Or you can make it sound as boring and blasé
Right.
as you want too, but
That's the writing. Well, like the Falmouth
Yeah.
book, I could have written that a bunch of different ways. I could have written it, each race I could have given a page to each race and talked about who won, who did this, and that would have been fine.
yeah, would have been passable.
You have great
Not that bad.
runners, Olympians, national champions, records.
Yeah, the things that were notable that happened.
Yeah, that would have been fine. So each year would have been a page, couple photos, that would have been fine.
Yeah, sure, why not?
But I'm thinking, maybe it's because like in my second home, I kind of know Falmouth. I'm like, nah, it's the community, it's the race, it's the host families, it's the
Yep.
restaurants, it's the it's the
It's
beaches,
everything.
it's the Falmouth Road Race, parallel to the running boom. I said, nah, there's more than just the race
Yeah,
each year, which is important.
yeah,
So that's why I included in the book as much flavor as I could, interviewing volunteers, interviewing the Olympians, interviewing Sonny Williams, the astronaut, interviewing the person at the starting line, whatever. I really threw out a wide net and tried
Yeah.
to represent as much as I could, because it really was very intertwined. Falmouth is unique in that. And as the race grew, so did Falmouth, so did the Cape.
yep,
So did the running boom. There were growing pains, not just Falmouth, all over the country when races just started to
being
pop
popular,
up.
yeah,
I mean, this is August '73 it started. So Frank Shorter won gold in '72. You had
Yeah,
some
right
books
after
that
that.
came out around that time talking about the benefits of just running.
yeah,
Aerobics came out in '68, but Jim Fix's book started to come out. Bill Rogers, another American, ran Boston in '74. Title IX came out in '72, so it took a little while for that to equal federal funding.
yep,
Bill Rogers won Boston in '75. So you get a lot of American interest on the global level, on TV, and the benefit of just running for health. All
Yeah.
within about 2 or 3 or 4 years, all these things started
like
to
kind
come
of
together.
congealing
There's your
together.
boom.
Yeah,
There's your running boom. There's people running. I mean, there were people running before that, but if
Yeah.
you saw someone running on the street, they're like either in college team, training for the Olympics. There weren't that many marathons at the time.
yeah, it's not the everyday runners that
Now,
you see now.
every day you see runners.
Yeah.
But the boom was starting that, and Falmouth was part of it.
Oh yeah,
So I'm thinking, no, if I'm going to write about the road race, I got to include all that, and I want to include all that.
yeah,
And to me, I think it makes it for a better story
Oh,
than
100%.
just the winners of each year, which again would have been a fine book.
yeah, would have been
Each
fine.
year would have been represented. But this way, you heard all these voices of how this started with 92 runners in the rain on a Wednesday on Tommy's 40th birthday to what it is now. It's just it just grew like a lot of races did in the country.
Yeah,
It started with a clothesline for the finish line the first year, and maybe an orange cone. That was about it.
if we're being generous here. you
Yeah.
know?
So so it just grew like a lot. So I wanted to really show that.
Yeah,
And then the world came with Greta Weitz and Rod Dixon in '80 winning, and that opened up everything, and just all those stories
yeah,
that
and-
Falmouth I thought was very unique. There's a few non-marathon races that have that uniqueness, and Falmouth is one of them. And I started thinking maybe I'm thinking that because I'm here, and it's like a second home. My
Yeah, a little
godparents have
bias.
grown up, but then as I was talking to other people, like I remember interviewing Catherine Dureba for the Falmouth book. One of the greatest marathoners out of Kenya, won Boston, Olympics, medalist, Falmouth. And one of the stories this was like years after she last ran Falmouth.
Yeah.
One of the stories she remembers vividly is with going with a host family picking blueberries.
that's great.
Now here you have someone who has literally run around the world
Yeah, she has
on
many
the world
accomplishments.
stage.
Yeah,
And one of the stories she didn't have to tell me.
Yeah.
I was asking her about
Yeah.
the race that she had run. The one 98 or 99 was really pouring out.
Yeah.
I was asking her about the host families. I was asking her what she thought of Falmouth. So I was asking her about the different things.
yeah,
And that just came to her mind. And she said her family would make the Kenyan bread for her.
oh wow,
Things like that. Dina Costa, who never won Falmouth, but she's one of our greatest American marathoners.
for sure.
I was asking her what she liked about Falmouth, because she was here and running. She goes, I remember the restaurant on Main Street, and I went in to get with my host family, a big meal, and I told the waiter to surprise me, something with pasta.
Yeah.
So he came with this big bowl of pasta with lobster on top with cream sauce. And he starts to walk away, and I go, excuse me, how do I eat this? And the waiter turns around and went like this, like, use your hands.
Yeah.
She says, this is great. So she's like, walked down a couple blocks, had lobster ice cream. I mean, here's one of our greatest American marathoners who has run Olympics and everything.
Yeah.
And that's one of the vivid stories that she has about our little Falmouth.
Yeah.
You know, our big little town or little big town, or however you want to see it. But that's what I mean, as you say, it fleshes it out.
Yeah.
But it's not just the race.
It's everything beyond.
It's everything, I mean, it's very unique.
Yeah.
There's a few other races like that in Bix in Iowa, Cherry Blossom, things like that, but not many.
Yeah.
Especially it started with the running boom that are still here.
Yeah. We're very lucky to
But
have
races that started in the running boom that are still here, that has this history, not just history of longevity. You can have 50 years of boring races that no one cares about.
Yeah.
But having that history, that colorful history, the Olympians, the community growing. I know people who, you know too, people bought homes here.
Yeah, because of
only because of this race that they come here.
Yes. Yeah, we all know Brian Baker.
And Brian Baker is one.
He'll be on the show at some point when he gets his butt down here back.
Yep. The Baker's awesome. And but I remember interviewing when Tommy was telling the famous story of him with Perrier. Fred Lebo was the race director of the New York City Marathon and was talking to Tommy one year at the Falmouth Road Race early on, mid-'70s, and said, you know, Perrier is thinking of sponsoring the New York City Marathon, which at the time was in September or October at that time. And he said, Tom, you should go down to New York for this region and talk to them.
Yeah.
So Tommy did. Tommy he told the story a lot, but he gave me this great story. You know, he went down with his best suit that had pizza pie stains on it and a couple of holes, and he sort of tried to do his tie. And he gets to New York, and it's like 90 degrees, and he's sweating, you know, his
really just
forehead.
Looking real sharp.
So he gets into the office, and he's flailing his arms, telling them about the beauty of Falmouth, along the vineyard, and the lovely area, and the road race, and
like the passion that's behind
the passion.
race.
And then about halfway through, he said the president stopped and said, "No, you got us. Here's a check.
Yeah.
You have us."
Yeah.
So Tommy being Tommy, I interviewed the president. He goes, "No, that's actually what happened."
Yeah.
Exactly what happened. He told me everything. Good for Tommy. I had a good memory for that. But so Perrier sponsored Falmouth. That was August. The New York Marathon was a couple months later. So Falmouth was the first sporting event that Perrier ever sponsored.
Really?
And there was the bear and everything. So all these little things, it just
kind of makes...
just kind of came up. And that was 78, 79. 78 was talking with Fred Lebo and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how these things grew organically all over the country because of the running boom, but Falmouth in particular.
Yeah.
You know, and then I remember talking to, again, like the Rod Dixons and Catherine DeRabes, that you want to run, Craig Virgin, another great marathoner, road racer, and cross-country champion, said you also want to run against the best.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever they
are.
are.
Some competition, too.
Falmouth started to become
and it still is.
the best. So we wanted to come and run against Frank Shorters and your Bill Rogers and your Greater Boston Track Club guys that Bill Squires would bring down. And so he goes, you want to run against the best, Dick Beardsley, everyone.
Yeah.
So Falmouth became that as well.
Oh, yeah.
And like with back to the Perrier, which made me start thinking about buying homes with Mr. Baker, was the gentleman from Perrier that year brought some runners down to compete from Perrier, and he ended up buying a place in Truro.
Yeah. I mean, once you get the beach, you ain't going back. That's just kind of how
Once
it
you
is.
come to the Cape, I mean, come on, the Cape's a Cape. You love it. I mean, for us, we know it. We love it.
Yeah.
So when the visitors come,
they fall in love with it
They
too.
love it too, yeah. And it's the race. It's that running boom. But those
Yeah.
stories
That's what makes
really tells you about. I remember someone, it was Matt Auger, who was telling me, he goes, you can have the greatest race, the greatest competition, the greatest athletes coming, the greatest organization of it. If the community is not behind you, you get nothing.
Yeah.
And that's anywhere, you know, the Big Seven in Iowa, the Cherry Blossom in Washington, D.C., Atlanta.
Yeah.
You can have the greatest talent level coming, but if the Boston Marathon has to go through all those towns and cities, if they're not behind you, if you don't have the support, what do you got?
Yeah. And
You know.
I feel like the Falmouth Road Race is just the epitome of the community coming out for everyone. And it's so interesting to me as someone who moved down here to Falmouth. And Falmouth was actually my first road race I ever did. I didn't start running until I was an adult.
Oh, wow.
And it was the first road race I ever did because my aunt was like, hey, you should put your name in for this. And my mom was like, I'll put everyone's name in for that. And I got in and I was like, okay.
P.O. Box 732, we all know, before digital.
Yeah, there we go. We had to mail in our stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just, it is the community. Falmouth shows up and shows out. It's the volunteers.
Yeah.
The fact that the volunteer spots, like, quote unquote, sell out. You're not paying to be a volunteer, but you have to sign up for certain spots. But the fact that they have to use like a sign up system because there are so many people they need to organize, and those spots actually fill up, and you physically can't get a volunteer spot sometimes because it's so popular.
Right.
And people come here from everywhere. I'm sure you talked to like a ton of these people.
Oh,
Bob.
yeah, I love it.
Like all across the globe, they come here to Falmouth. And Falmouth to me is like the perfect picture of something that is so local, like so hyper local. The entire town is like so concentrated. And because we get that resident first entry into the road race too, it's kind of a rite of passage to be a Falmouth resident and run the road race. Like, I mean, if you haven't done it at least once and you live in town, like, what are you doing with your life?
You got to run it.
So the community for Falmouth, they really just like show up and show out. And I know that you've been a big part of that community for a while, and you've seen a lot of different stories and storylines that have played out throughout all those years that you've been here. Are there any that kind of stick out to you as to maybe things that you've seen where the community has really just like shown its true colors and shown up and showed out, or how runners have been supported by the community in a large way?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's a good point because Falmouth isn't just the race. A lot of people, when they say Falmouth, they kind of mean the race and the town.
Yeah,
it is so intertwined. Well, it really is. Like you're saying with the volunteers, so many people. I don't know if it's the same amount of people, but the same approach. You have all these people who schedule their time and their year around running Falmouth. The people who volunteer, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They want to schedule their volunteer work and everything because they're a part of it, like with the volunteers.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially like just supporting you along the course, whether they're families. If you run the race over and over again, you see the kids grow up. Yeah, but they are there on the course itself, especially when you really need it. Was it right after the 10K mark where you go toward the water and you take a left, you go up the hill? I always think right at the top of that hill is the flag.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you got like another quarter mile. And there are spectators there, probably for dumb people like me, who they go, you still got to run, don't stop.
Keep it moving.
Yeah, because I always forget.
Well, they used to have that like photo finish line there.
All right.
And then they removed it because everyone kept stopping to walk there because they thought it was the actual finish
That's
line.
right. Well, that reminds me of a story. I can't remember the year. You know, when you get to so the 10K and you go straight toward the water and take a left, but you got to take a left and you go up. And now you're going about, say, a quarter mile flat, and then you go past where the Brothers 4 used to be and you crest down where the flag is. There's a crosswalk there. And one year, the female winner, I can't remember the year of this, it's in the book I have it, the leader was approaching the crosswalk, and the woman in second was approaching that crosswalk and really started running fast to catch up to the leader.
Yeah.
She passed the leader and just sort of relaxed.
Oh.
And the leader looked at her and goes, oh no, and the leader kept going, and that woman in second thought the crosswalk was the finish.
Oh no.
And these are the top two women.
Yeah.
And she's like, why is she still, here's the finish, because then you can really see it.
Yeah.
So then two of them were racing, and they came in
Down
first,
the back.
second, the way it was for a second.
Yeah.
So you're right, actually, you know, I remember the year Ben Flanagan, one of the years he won, he got to the crosswalk and somebody had like a banner, and he in support. He like slapped the banner because he was all excited because he was leading, and then he jumped over the finish line.
Yeah.
So you're right, the spectators, especially that area, they're on the roof. Especially the old casino. Captain Sweeney, Bill Sweeney was the owner of that. And for the book, I remember interviewing the kids would tell me he would allow them up on the roof, like a lot. These old photos are great, cheering them on. But then the kids are saying, but then if we started getting some rambunctious, you know, Dad would sort of look up at us, and that was like, all right, we got to get off the roof. Because, you know, we were kind of getting too rambunctious. But you see those old photos where they're on the roof at the Captain Kidd.
That was so interesting to see those
Whole,
pictures.
all the way to the casino. Yeah. It is.
Because there are people all over the roofs in those pictures, which is wild.
It's
You'd
unbelievable.
never see that now.
No, I remember the first 2 years it finished at the Brothers 4.
Yeah.
And Tommy Ladd would always say that everyone went in there and drank.
Yeah.
And then
I'm sure they did.
they'd spill onto the ball field, and the police didn't like that, and Tommy didn't like that. He goes, I don't like that. So they extended it for other reasons too, but they extended it and didn't let you go on the field.
Mm-hmm.
So then you went past the casino, so now you can extend, spectators can be on there because when it finished at the Brothers 4, the casino's after.
Yeah.
So now that the finish line extended down, now it's like, oh, people can go on that roof.
Yeah.
And then some of the old photos that you'll see, the officials are on top of the restaurant on the roof.
Oh, okay.
And I have an old photo about this, that for several years before timing was really fantastic, they'd have these big numbers on top of the roof that the volunteers would flip over big, large numbers, and that's how you would get your time.
Oh.
They'd have somebody with a walkie-talkie at the finish line, and every 5 minutes, like big sandwich boards, you know,
they flip it over.
They would flip it over on the roof, and I mean, you get your time later, but
Yeah.
it was old back then. Every race, it took a long time to get your results, no
I
matter
would
what the race in
imagine,
this
yeah.
country, no matter what the race was. So you cross the finish line as a runner, you'd look up to the roof, and you'd have a couple volunteers, and they would every 5 minutes, so it would be like 35:05. 35:10, and they would flip over these big, large numbers every 5 minutes. And then one year, it ended after a while because one year there was a fire and smoke came from the back of the roof.
Oh, gosh.
And the volunteers looked around and said,
Oh, no.
this could be the last year we're going to be up here. I forget what the
Yeah.
year that was. So that was another rooftop. And then when you cross the finish line in the early days, when it was down, further down, people would take a left right into the ball field. Well, that backed things up.
Yeah.
So then you'd cross the finish line and go a little bit. There were some years, and this happened at Boston Marathon and other races, not just Falmouth, because of the old archaic scoring system. There were runners that you had to wait to cross the finish line.
Oh.
You're still in the race,
Yeah.
but there was a line
To cross
from the
the
finish
finish
line standing until the volunteer got your name, go, and you're still in the race.
Yeah.
It happened to Boston Marathon,
That's
just because
wild.
it was the old day. Then
Yeah.
Falmouth had different ways of fixing that. They had one where a volunteer would have a tape recorder
Yeah.
and just verbally say the numbers, so that it was quicker than writing it down.
Yeah.
So the runners would go through. I think in the old days, I don't know if Falmouth did, I think they did the old cross-country one,
Okay.
where you run across the finish line, the volunteer gives you a tongue depressor that you grab with the number on it,
Yeah. And then you
and then you
hand it
match
to the
that up
next
later on.
person.
I
Yeah.
think Falmouth might have done that. I'm trying to remember on that one.
Okay.
But that's how it was back then. It was old school. Again, not just Falmouth. The Boston Marathon, like I said, the Boston Marathon is photos of people standing on
Yeah.
the finish line, just ready to get their,
That's wild.
yeah. So you're standing at the finish line going, but that's just, now with the electronic thing, obviously it's much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. It's significant. I don't think I want to stand at the end of a marathon
No.
waiting to cross the finish
So
line.
we had state police with horses at the finish line at
Really?
Falmouth.
Wild.
When it got this grew. I think we mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned it before, it was 92 the first year,
Yeah.
then 200, then 400, then 6 to 800, 1,600, 4,000. I mean, that's in a short period of time.
That's a lot of growth.
Being voted the best race in the country.
Yeah.
Runners World, the road race has that trophy. I got
Yeah.
a picture of it in the book. Those successive years, that's fast growth.
That's yeah.
And
Yeah,
a lot of
there
races had that.
definitely is.
Again,
Yeah.
not just Falmouth. This was the running boom, so they
Yeah.
were there. But it gets to the point that race organizers, no matter where you are, have to say, wait, we gotta
We gotta like.
step back and be a little
We're
more
growing too
proactive.
fast,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it's grown organically so fast.
Yeah.
I remember Courtney Bird, who you well know from Cape
Oh,
Cod
yeah.
Marathon.
Yeah, we know Courtney.
Everyone knows Courtney, I guess.
I feel like there are a few people in Falmouth that don't know
Oh.
Courtney Bird.
I don't know how that happens.
Yeah.
I love Courtney. He's great. He was telling me a story. The first year Falmouth became a lottery was he, I love this story. He gave me for the book. He put the entrance in bags, a bunch of different bags. Each bag was filled with a bunch of entrants.
Yeah.
Lined up the bags in his backyard. He had a pet goose called Lucy. And he let Lucy pick the bags. And whichever bags he picked, he eliminated, and the bags that Lucy didn't pick were the random selected runners.
Of course, that's how.
And his wife at the time
Carolyn,
took pictures of it. She worked for the Enterprise. And he goes, the front page, great photo of Lucy the Goose doing the selection process. He goes, it's great, funny as hell, love the photo. And he said, still, some people complained about the picking the numbers. And he goes, how more random can you get with a goose? Come on, guys.
The goose has no idea. The goose has no foot in the game, you know?
It's the process is irrelevant.
Yeah.
How you do it. Random's random.
Yeah.
Whether he does that and throws darts at it, it doesn't matter. It's
still a random.
It's funny with the goose. I to give him credit. That was a great story to do it. But that worked.
Yeah. Why not, you know?
I forget what year, the first year it did that. But that's, you know.
Yeah, it's stories like that kind of make the race what it is.
Yeah.
And just give it that much more color, you know?
I don't think that happened one year, but that was, you know.
That feels like a Courtney Bird act.
It was up to me. I would have said, Courtney, keep doing it. Come on. Lucy's doing how more random.
I think you would have to start bringing in other different types of birds, too. Like one year we have like a chicken.
Oh, that's true.
Like
yeah,
turkey,
maybe change up the process.
Parakeet, you know?
Yeah.
Really just like mix it up. Then it really is random because then you don't even know what type of bird it's going to be that year.
Bird doesn't care.
Yeah, the bird's like, whatever, as long as you're going to give me food after this, I don't really care.
Yeah, bird doesn't have a fellow bird who wants to be in the race.
Yeah, there's no other birds. We don't have a bird division.
Come on.
It's fine.
How more random? Yeah.
I love that.
But no, but with Falmouth like that, I mean, like I was saying earlier about writing the book.
Yeah.
I could have written it like each page each road race had a page.
Yep.
Talk about the winner, ask him a question or two, ask her a question or two, and that would have been a fine book.
Yeah.
But with all these unique flavors of things, you know, another thing with Courtney, I remember one year he was telling me with Rod Dixon, again, a New Zealand medalist, great runner, a nice guy. They were having a party at Courtney's estate along the course. And apparently the sewer system was backing up. So Courtney's there digging the backyard, as we all do if we have sewers and stuff like that, sewer system. And as he's working on it, he hears from behind him some guy saying, do you need a hand? And he goes, yeah, grab a shovel. So the guy puts his beer on the shelf, whatever, the shovel, and there's two guys shoveling, Courtney Bird and the other guy, Rod Dixon.
Yeah. You never know who
Where else are you going to get that as we were going to talk about, like the global
it's so
and
global,
a local.
but so local at the same time.
Falmouth does that. Now, that's a funny side thing, but does have that balance.
Yeah.
You know, I can't remember if I spoke to you before about Falmouth Road Race dealing with visas and international travel and athletes coming from all over the world with their special fluids for the water stations and things like that, and putting them up with host families, making sure they're okay, yet having the bike valet for the regular runners at 10K Market, Falmouth Heights, where you can ride your bike. It gets stored there and looked after. They have buses that are provided. It takes you to Woods Hole. You run the race. Get your hot dog from Bill Doherty.
You're on your way.
You know, the legacy, and get on your bike and go home.
Yeah.
There's your global and your. I mean, it's a remarkable balance to achieve.
Yeah, it's a very interesting balance to achieve, and it's just great.
Yeah,
I just love it.
So between that and just the race itself, like I said with the book, it parallels the running boom because the race started in '73. The running boom. If you want to trace it back, there was an aerobics book from 1968 that they followed Air Force athletes about aerobic intake, oxygen intake, the benefits of that kind of exercise, and that was 1968. You got Frank Shorter, an American winning gold medal in 1972 on TV. We could all see. First American to win the Olympics for decades since 1908. You have Bill Rogers, a local guy, doing well in the Boston Marathon in 1974. After dropping out in 73, he was 14th in 74. Winning other marathons, Philadelphia, Bay State, Bill Rogers doing well. Frank, silver medal in 1976 Olympic marathons. You have Jim Fixx writing the book, author who's had heart attack, and the benefits of running prolonged his life. The joy, the complete book of running. Jim Fixx. You have Title IX, 1972, equal federal funding of male and female sports. All within about 3-4 years, there's your running boom.
Yeah.
What was in that?
Falmouth Road Race.
Falmouth Road Race, 1973.
Yep.
Parallel, bringing up the running boom with that. So it's just a neat. So I looked at that when we're talking about the book and everything. that it's more than just the race and who won,
Yeah. It's
which
the
is
community.
interesting and is included.
Yeah.
It's the community, like you say. It's when you say I'm running Falmouth, you kind of mean the race and you're going to the town.
Yeah. You're coming here for a party. You're coming here to celebrate being part of the community.
Right.
At least for a weekend, you get to be a Falmouth resident.
Exactly. And for us, like I say, I'm local. It's like Falmouth is like my second home. I just love the place. You loved it enough to come here.
Yeah, I live here.
Right. So, and everyone knows it locally. When I was interviewing all these international athletes and these famous Olympians,
They have
medalists
connections with people down here.
who didn't know what Falmouth was. With the example of Catherine Dureba from Kenya, who's won Boston Marathon, Falmouth, Olympian medalist. When I was asking her about her races, and also, what did she like about Falmouth and the vineyard and the whole area and Cape, one of the stories she vividly was telling me was going blueberry picking with her host family.
Yeah, yeah. It's those
And I'm
smaller
like,
moments.
what an awesome. And this was several years after the last time she ran when I wrote the book. And it was right there. She didn't have to search for it. When I was asking her about some other things in addition to the race, which she gave me a great story about the race, that came right up. And she also said her host family made Kenyan bread.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
they really made her feel at home,
Yeah.
which a lot of the host families in Falmouth do
Yeah,
personal touches for the athletes, which is a great thing that this race does.
yeah, it's fantastic.
So things like that. I don't know if you were alluding to about people going to races in different states or countries. They go in to do the race and they leave.
Yeah, kind of sad.
Here are some, it's sad at one point, at some point. And here are these international global giants,
Yeah,
just two examples,
yeah,
who didn't do that.
yeah. They come here and
They come in
really
and look at the
embrace
story. They were telling me equal amount of racing stories on the course and these kind of fun things. I know some of the athletes go to the vineyard for the day
it. Yep.
and they come back.
Yep.
And Joan Benoit Samuelson always takes a dip when she comes down here.
Yeah.
And I
That's
remember
right.
asking her, I go, why? You live in Maine. She goes, it's still cold up there. This is August.
Yeah.
She goes, the water's still cold. I love the water down here. Oh, okay. I never knew that. I didn't
Why
think it
not,
was still cold up there in the summer.
Yeah.
So that's Falmouth. Like you said,
Yeah.
that's what
It's the
the kind of
stories,
things
it's
Falmouth does.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all those things together.
But it was interesting. Remember you were asking me about like different stories, and there's so many you could have. I mean, my book could have been this thick about Falmouth.
I don't doubt it
The
at all.
race itself, the volunteers like Bill Doherty with the hot dogs, having to keep up with all the runners.
Oh,
He
yeah.
had to create the machine to make it 1,000 at a time for us to get those hot dogs, which we love.
Yeah.
Like the early days with Tommy Leonard telling me that he went from store to store with a little shopping cart on the sidewalk. He'd go into each store to get like a purse, a handkerchief, just prizes.
Yeah, to hand
And
out
those
to
are the
people.
prizes that in the early years he
Yeah.
got. But he's going down the sidewalk with his little shopping cart, just getting prizes, gift certificates, whatever he could get
Yeah, whatever he can get his hands on.
through Main Street.
Yeah.
And then it's grown from that,
Where it
to
is
the
now.
prize money, to course
Yeah.
record money, to the
Wild.
clock that they had.
Wild.
But there's so many, like you say, with Falmouth, you think of so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big stories I remember, like that had to be in the book, but people always love to hear, was the one in I think it was 78 with Alberto Salazar, who almost died.
Oh, yeah.
That was we were talking about like rookie mistakes, and it
Mm-hmm.
takes a few marathons to get him under your belt. Well, Alberto Salazar, I interviewed him for the book as well for this particular story. That in '78, he was part of the Greater Boston Track Club that Bill Squires coached, and basically the American winners of the Boston Marathon in the '70s and '80s came out of the Greater Boston Track Club. So Bill Rogers was a member, Greg Meyer, Bob Hodge, great Mount Washington runner, holds that record. I think still holds that record of how many wins. Bob Hall, the wheelchair athlete, all came out of the Greater Boston Track Club, and many more. Unbelievable. So they they trained as a group, very good runners. So they ran as a group, like the Kenyans and Africans do now. That's what the Americans did. And then in a race, it gets to a certain point that's like, okay, whose race is it going to be now?
Yeah.
I want to beat you. We'll have a beer later, but right now, I don't care. I don't care if you're a teammate.
Yeah, I don't like it right now.
Let's go. So at Woods Hole in '78 is really hot and gross, like you say.
Normally is.
Normally is.
Normally is.
If it's not raining in August here. So people started looking at Bill Rogers, and Salazar was out of Wayland High School when he joined Greater Boston, but he was so good. So he was younger. He looked up to all these guys. So he's sort of looking to see what Bill Rogers is doing, and other runners are too. So Coach Squires sees that, and he tells Bill Rogers, who wasn't aware of that, why don't you go around the building, hydrate, stretch out, I'll let you know when to start.
Yeah.
To keep him out of sight from the other people. Dan Dillon was here, one of our great runners as well, out of Greater Boston. So it was a good group. So the gun goes off, and Bill Rogers skips the first water station because he's all hydrated.
Yeah.
So Salazar looks at Bill and goes, oh, he skips it, I'll skip it.
Yeah, I'll do what he's doing.
He's not as hydrated as Bill Rogers. Does that for the second mile and so on. It starts to take an effect.
Yeah.
And as the lead packs whittled down, Bill Rogers smartly started like in the second group of that lead pack. It was so hot. And I think Mike Roach was in that grouping in area. So it got to the point around 4.5, and Salazar was telling me he was just off Bill Rogers' shoulders. Mike Roach might have been there. I can't remember who else was at that point, about 4.5 miles. And Al said, he goes, we all, like I say, we train together, so we really know all of our abilities.
Yeah.
We feed off each other in training. So when we run as a group in a race, we kind of know where we are. And then there is a point along the race that we just sort of stop talking to each other and we break, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Here it is. But at 4.5, I should be a little closer to Bill, so I'm going to catch up with him. And he goes, I couldn't. And I was getting confused. And I said, what do you mean you're getting confused? He goes, well, now looking back, I was getting heat stroke.
Yeah.
Oxygen wasn't going to my brain, but at the time, I didn't know that. So what do? You run harder. That's
always the answer.
Smart things to do when getting heat stroke.
Yeah,
so he pushed himself even harder.
Yeah.
That, it's like if a car's not working, what do? You slam on the pedal to get more gain. Well, you ruin it even more.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing. And he said, to this day, when I interviewed him for the book, he goes, I do not remember the last couple miles. I just don't. It ain't here. So I interviewed the other top 10 people, because he came in 10th, to fill in all the blanks. And at about the Brothers 4 area, he was in, I think, maybe 5th or 6th place. Bill Rogers already won.
Yeah.
But by that time, the top of the hill to the finish, he dropped several spots. Salazar did come in 10th. And Charlie Rogers, Bill's brother, gave me a great photo that he showed. And Greg Meyer was in 11th, and he had passed Salazar on that hill. And you could kind of see Al was really wavering badly. So at the finish line, sure enough, Al just collapsed.
Yeah.
He had a body temperature of 108, which is fatal.
Yeah, not safe.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah, not safe.
And one of the main things Falmouth Road Race did ahead of the curve and expertly was the taking care of heat. And they had a kiddie pool of ice at the finish line, which I had researched that there were medical journals around that time
starting to say something about that.
Starting that. But we were ahead of the curve. Dr. Craigo, Art Craigo was ahead of that because you're on the Cape in August.
He still practices here on the Cape.
Awesome.
Dr. Craigo's still around.
That crew was awesome, unbelievable. So I was reading the medical journal back then before their studies, just sort of talking about it. We had that. It saved Salazar's life. So they threw Salazar in that kiddie pool with the ice. And to bring his body temperature down, his father, Jose, who was there, said, don't waste time. Take him to the hospital.
Take him. Get him out of here.
Which is like 2 miles away, maybe?
Yeah, barely.
And they're like, no, he'll be dead. He won't make it. He goes, we got to bring him temperature down, which is true. That's one of the things. If your body temperature's like that, you're not going to make the trip.
You got to manage you got to keep the homeostasis somewhat first and then.
Stable. So he's being very combative, which is a sign of heat stroke as well. Fighting off people, so he's upside down on his back in the ice thing. They're helping him there, and his father comes over with 2 tongue depressors in the shape of a cross above Al's head to give him something to focus on. They gave him last rites. It was just very bad scene for Al. They finally brought him to the hospital, and he got tons of liters of fluid in him, which was help. Brian Salzberg, who was from the Falmouth 5, he's now the Falmouth 1, I guess. The only person who has run every Falmouth Road Race was in the room, unrelated to Salazar, but saw them coming in. It was a hot day, so Brian said, we weren't alone. There was a lot of people. There was a lot of people there. But the top 10, maybe a little bit more, but at least the top 10 get a prize back then on a flatbed truck in the field that you could see. So there was enough time between when the leaders finished and those awards, maybe an hour or two.
To make it back.
There was enough time that Salazar was discharged and he made it back to get his award, and he still had the gauze pad on his arm. There's a great picture Charlie Rogers, Bill's brother, gave me for another photo he gave for the book, of Al walking up the stairs to get to the flatbed to get that, whatever the 10th place award was. They introduced top 10. He didn't take the gauze pad off.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a badge of honor. Like, look, this didn't kill me this year.
I'm here.
Watch out for me. And sure enough, Salazar, the next 4 or 5 years, he won Falmouth, he won Boston, he won New York. He was just untouchable. He was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But it's one of those stories that adds to the legend of Falmouth, good and bad. That was kind of bad, but turned out good. Bad.
Could have swung in either direction,
right.
honestly.
Because, Falmouth can be that way.
Oh, 100%.
As we all know, just
haven't run it.
being here, but just running it.
Yeah.
You know, that's happened. I remember Dave McGilvery saying his first year, I think it was 2013 or 14 as race director, it was real muggy rain. It ended like 10, 15, 20 minutes before the race started. It ended. But they had to delay the start because they had to squeegee some of the puddles out.
Oh, yeah.
Because part of the course is below sea level.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
If anyone who ran in 1999, I think, the big rainstorm, part of it's below sea level with the puddles.
Oh, yes.
But then David said that shortly after that, he goes, the humidity just
snapped on.
Yeah, and we lost, not lost, but a lot of runners just bailed out in medical.
That's the joy of being on the shoreline where you get the raw,
it was just,
weather.
because usually a storm would wash away some of it.
Oh, no.
Or a little bit. He goes, but this was, it wasn't even gradual. It was, you could just sweat.
The number
Before we started, that was a bad year.
Yeah.
For the rain, a little bit of a delay, the squeegee, and then extra grossness. Yeah. And then the 99 with the pouring, I remember talking to Catherine DeRaber again about that. And she said that, because, they're running very fast, the elites.
Yeah.
Sub 5. And she's looking where she puts her foot, and she couldn't see if there's a pothole underneath that puddle. She goes, I hope that's where I'm going to put my foot.
Yeah.
I can't see the mile marker. I interviewed Craig Blanchett, who's one of the most Falmouths. And about that year, I'm thinking, well, how was that for you? If you hydroplane a little bit, this was ankle deep water.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, I remember going down the hill to the finish line, and you couldn't see the finish line because that's below sea level, and the water's above the finish line enough that you couldn't see the yellow paint.
Yeah.
But I knew where it was, but it was that deep.
Yeah.
And he told me for the book, he goes, well, one or two things are going to happen. I'm going to hit that water and just
slide.
The chair's going to stay here, and I'm just going to fly off it. Or I'm going to hit that water, and I'm both going to go sideways. He goes, I can swim, so I'm okay either way. I go, what happened? He goes, well, I looked around, no one was really next to me, so I kind of slowed a little bit as I got to the water.
Just kind of like easing ever so slightly.
And I was talking to the Hoyts, the same thing.
Yeah.
Because this is before they had a rain guard that year, and Dick Hoyt, who pushed his father, Rick Hoyt, the Team Hoyt duo, and for those of you who don't know, late duo. So Dick Hoyt would push his son, Dick Hoyt would push his son Rick in a customized wheelchair. Well, there was no underneath yet, and Rick's feet were getting wet. They protected as much as they could, but 7 miles in the rain. It was heavy rain and big puddles, and the wheels would keep kicking up water in Dick's face and chest. He goes, "This was not fun." Him pushing with all the rain because it was coming up from the wheel in front was coming up.
Yeah,
and
both wheels are spit. All the wheels
so it was just later on he had better protection with some of the water and things, but at that time he said he didn't. So it was just, and it slows it down.
Yeah.
It's like when you're running in water, you're running in sand, it just slows you down.
Slower.
So imagine with wheels and pushing it or propelling yourself, it's dragging you.
Yeah, it's
so that particular year because I remember when I was first interviewing people, it was about 1999, it's ankle deep water, and we're like, yeah, okay, the fish was this big, I get it. But then I started looking and go, they weren't lying. Yeah. You know how we are running, sometimes we're
like, oh my God, I walked both
water was
ways to school.
Yeah, the water was up to my waist, I had to swim. But it was actually some photos, the water was up at the ankles.
That's wild.
You'll see some of the old photos. So you couldn't see part of the course if there was a pothole, especially if you're going that fast like Catherine or Leader or the wheelchair athletes. There had to be.
Yeah.
Because there's some tough turns.
Yeah.
That you slow down on when it's a good day.
Yeah. There's a lot of tight turns on that course. So I
And it's
can
not all
only imagine.
smooth.
Oh,
It's-
absolutely.
they do a
We're
great
not.
job. You know, the pothole patrol, as they say, does a great job. But you know, it is what it is. So you add that storm.
Oh yeah, that's a mess.
That was,
Mess.
and they ran it there. I mean, '91, I remember with Hurricane Bob.
Yeah.
You were, yeah, that was too early for you, right?
No, I was born in 1993, Paul.
Oh.
Make you feel old.
Anyway, Hurricane Bob came through, the fatal hurricane,
Yeah.
and it crashed ashore on Block Island and Falmouth.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no protection, so it came in full force.
Oh yeah, there's no protection there.
Here, it came the night of the race.
Oh, okay.
So they had Falmouth race. John Carroll was telling me this for the book. They were getting things put together at Falmouth Heights, and they could see the storm coming. And I'm like, 91, we were pretty good with weather forecasts. Didn't know it was coming? Yeah, we're so focused on the race, we didn't really pay attention.
Yeah.
He goes, so the race, we had the race that Sunday, and we're getting things, we sort of look and we see the storm. So I told all the volunteers who live outside of Falmouth, go home now.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Gone.
It's coming. And everything else that we had left at the ball field, we just sort of put together and covered. And we all just took cover. And the storm just came, and it actually moved part of the course. John gave me photos to use in the book that part of Surf Drive was moved. Some houses were moved, torn in half. The Falmouth area lost power.
Yeah.
To the point that the part of the course, it took a long time to repair. Because other things were more important.
Yeah.
The race had just run that day, so they were focusing, the engineers, the city, the town, obviously focusing on power, food.
Making sure people are okay.
Who cares about this road?
Yeah.
But it extended long enough that John goes, it's starting to get next
Closer to
year.
Next year, yeah.
We were planning or starting to think about an alternate route because it hadn't been fixed yet. Because it was still, you know, there's a great photo of it buckled in the book. His van is parked on it and the road is buckled. It's just, it got moved. It was that strong of a force.
Yeah, we had.
But before that August, they did, whatever engineers, whatever, did refix that portion of the course.
Nice.
But like you say, I mean, it's either hot, gross,
or
rainy,
yeah,
or you just, I mean,
perfect.
a few hours earlier, they wouldn't have had or been caught in the race.
Yeah.
That hurricane.
Wild.
Hurricane Bob. It was that close. It was that night.
That's absolutely wild.
Yeah, they would come in. People who stayed over went out the next day, and like telephone poles were down. It was just
crazy.
Block Island. I mean, the whole area, but Block Island and Falmouth got the most because that's just where the most force came.
Yeah.
Unabated. There's just no trees and things like that to come across.
Absolute
But that's
bananas.
part of the history, like you said. It's not just the race.
No, it's the people. It's the environment. It's the
It's
whole
community.
The whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I think one of the first photos in the book, and I used to talk about, is a aerial NASA photo of Cape Cod. Beautiful photo of the whole Cape.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think out of this area think Cape Cod's a town.
Yeah. No.
You know, so like
No.
when I'm talking to you or other people, I'll say on the Cape.
Yeah. And
right.
they think it's just one big.
So when I started to speak, I would say on the Cape, and they go, oh yeah, where's this Cape Cod? I go, you're in it. I thought this was Falmouth. I go, oh, I got to remember, I'm talking to people. When I'm doing some of my book talks,
Yeah, they don't realize.
I have to know my audience. So, right, I said, right, we live in New England, but on the Cape. We don't say we live on New England.
In the Cape.
Or in the Cape.
Yeah.
So it's a different, it's like,
It's
I got to
verbiage,
remember who
you
I'm
know.
talking to.
Yeah.
So I'll say Cape Cod is so I started with that photo.
Yeah.
Saying, this is Cape Cod.
And this is Falmouth.
And here's the road race, this little section right here in the bottom photo. But this is Cape Cod.
Yeah.
Starts right on the other side of the bridge for a little bit, and then goes up. That's Cape Cod. So it's funny how...
Yeah, it's kind of lost in translation a little bit.
Yeah, because Falmouth wasn't known outside this area before the race.
You really even cared.
Didn't know about Falmouth.
Unless you're like a scientist at WHOI or MBL or something.
Yeah.
Like you had no idea. And that's like we mentioned, the population of Woods Hole, minimal.
Right.
Very small.
Yeah, so no one knew this area. So when this race, and that's another dynamic I wanted to show, is that, you know, you had to sort of tell people who you were.
Yeah.
Like Falmouth, there's one in England, that's where we're named it, but it's Falmouth is this little hamlet, little town, it's neat with Woods Hole. Cape Cod is a region, like New England's a region.
Yep.
So when people started to come here, especially in 1980, like I was saying with Rod Dixon and Greta Weitz, you know, Norway and New Zealand, you know, they didn't know what Falmouth was until this race sort of put Falmouth on the map in that respect.
Yeah.
So then Falmouth started to grow as the race started to grow, and the surrounding towns started to grow. Cape Cod started to grow, people, as we all know, started to buy. Some people
Properties
bought
down here.
property and homes
Yeah,
just because of the race.
yeah, yeah. And it's
You
kind of
know.
grown into what it is now, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
And that's how it starts like that. Like the story of Tommy going to Perrier in New York. Fred Lebo, who was the race director of the New York City Marathon, was here for the race and was talking to Tommy, saying, Perrier is starting to do some sponsorships. They want to sponsor the New York City Marathon, which at the time was September or October that year. This is 78-ish. He goes, Tommy, you should go down and talk to him. So Tommy went to the New York office of the regional, and he always told me tells a story at the top with his best suit that had pizza pie stains on it, and his tie was crooked, and a hole here, and the button was off, and it was 90 degrees out there, and his forehead was red, and he's out in the meeting office with the president, and he's flailing his arms, telling about the beauty of Falmouth that no one has heard about, and the race is only 3 or 4 years old, and he goes, yeah, this would be great, and Tommy said, they stopped me about halfway through, and they said, you got us. Yeah. Here's a check. We want to sponsor.
Yeah.
And, Tommy being Tommy, I tracked down the president who was there, vice president, and I said, is this all true, the way, blah, blah, blah? He goes, yeah, he sold us.
That's pretty much it.
Here's this guy with a burned forehead because it's hot out, sweating and arms flailing, bartender telling us the beauty about this place we haven't heard of in the race. He goes, if this guy loved it with this much passion, we want to be a part of it because we heard a little bit. So we gave him a check. We sponsored it. There's the banner with our name on it. He goes, I went there that August with some runners, and we sponsored it. He goes, the first sports event they sponsored was Falmouth.
Falmouth Road Race.
New York was a couple months later.
Yeah.
And he goes, that's how it started. And that's how we started to know about these little towns. And like you're saying, he ended up buying a place in Truro.
Yeah.
Because he loved it so much.
Yeah. Once you come here, you can't.
You go from not even knowing what Falmouth was to making a home.
Yeah.
And I said, that's like you're saying, it's not just the race, it's the community, it's the people, it's the race, it's everything together. It was a really neat symbiosis of all of that together, everyone growing together with growing pains.
Yeah.
The whole country had that with the running boom.
Yeah.
All the different laws, towns and cities, it's the races that are stuck around and they've figured it out. There are a few. There could be some that are 50 plus years old that it's just a race that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
And nobody remembers. But you got a Falmouth or a Big 7 or a Cherry Blossom or Atlanta that not only just being the longevity of 50 plus years, but the history that's with it.
Yep.
The great stories, the legacy, the people, the community of all these places that no one outside this area knew about.
Yeah.
Now you circle it on your calendar.
And we get to share it with the rest of the world.
Exactly. You live halfway around the world, and Falmouth is on your calendar. Our Falmouth.
Yeah, we love it.
We love it. We welcome you. It's awesome. It's just, it's a great showcase.
It is. And so I guess we'll leave it there for this time around, Paul. That's a good ending point, I feel like, for us. Listeners and watchers, viewers, we're going to be doing a part 2 of this. We'll have Paul back on to talk a little bit more into the Boston Marathon side of things, I believe. And we'll just talk about some more stories and stuff because Paul and I don't know how to shut up, and that's pretty much the long and short of it.
No commercials, we'll keep talking.
Yeah. But if you'd like to get some more information on Paul, would you like to let us know where people can find information on you and your books and anything that would be useful if they want to maybe read your books or get in
definitely.
contact?
PaulClerici.com, PaulClerici.com is my website. Plenty of pages. I have pages devoted just to the books, just to the Falmouth Road Race, different images you can order through there, and I can sign them for you.
Yeah.
Chat. I'm on Facebook, so as Juliana said, we just keep talking.
Yeah.
Whether it's verbally or
over
social media. We'll just always stories.
Always stories coming, and it's a great thing. Wonderful. Well, thank you for being on today, Paul.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and like I said, we're going to have Paul back. Paul's going to talk probably a little bit more into the Boston Marathon side of things next time we have him back on. If you'd like to get in contact with me over here on Runnah, you can go and check us out on Instagram and on TikTok at RunnahPod. And you can also find us on YouTube at RunnahPod. And then you can send me an email at runnahpod@gmail.com if you have any questions, queries, concerns, or if you'd like the links to anything. And also, all of Paul's information will be linked down below, either in the episode description or in the video description, wherever you're consuming this media. And you can just go ahead, click on that link down below, go to his website, maybe buy a book, say, hey, I saw you on Runnah. It was a nice time. Will you sign a book for me? So it'd be great. But thank you again, Paul, for being on.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. And we will see you on the next episode of Runnah. And that's the end, Paul. Woohoo! We did it. We finished. Yay!
That was good.
Round 1. Thank you for listening to this episode of Runnah. This podcast is edited, hosted, and produced by me, Juliana Coughlin. Brought to you in part by the Falmouth Running Club and the Falmouth Community TV station. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram and on TikTok at RunnahPod. And you can send us an email at runnahpod@gmail.com. And our original theme music was brought to you by the one and the only wonderful Jeffrey Hutton. And keep up the great work. I'm proud of you. Like, I'm going to flip myself upside down. You're just going to see my butt. That would be a visually engaging thing to do.
We're back.
Here we are. Hello.
Literally, you're back. Yeah,
back
see?
again.